There have been internet disruptions, conversations, some of us busy with work, family, errands. And then there's what happened last night, over the last few days, weeks, this rather strange 1.5 year with the COVID lockdown. And then all else that happened before that, from our earliest memories. When I ring the bell, we're going to simply recognize that all of this, the work and the conversations this morning, those memories from the past, they've all contributed to the momentum within the mind. And so, a very nice place from which to start this practice is to simply recognize that our mind is not going to stop moving the moment I ring this bell. But what is going to happen when I ring this bell is that we are going to, just to the best of our ability, not more, not less, we're going to attempt to step into this moment. And this moment, I know you've heard the words many times. We were talking about Eckhart Tolle a few moments ago, the power of now. We've all attributed certain meanings to the word present moment, to the word now. But let's step beyond these meanings, these labels, and awaken our five senses. And so, even just disregard the word present moment, disregard the word now, but through our five senses, recognize our five senses as our doorways into this moment. And then begin landing into this moment. You feel the surfaces underneath your body, those surfaces that support your body. You feel the way in which your body supports the fabric of clothing that wraps itself around you. Sometimes around your arms, your shoulders. You feel the weight of this fabric. You feel its texture. You feel the way in which the fabric bends around your joints. Around your skin. And very gradually, you begin to recognize how it is from this present moment that we think about the past, that we think about the future. The key consistency being this present moment. And this practice begins simply with this recognition that it is from this present moment that we observe all of these movements. The past, it no longer exists. We're explaining to the mind, the past, it doesn't exist. We're explaining to the body, the past doesn't exist. The future doesn't exist. Why do we need to explain this to the body using the mind? Simply because the body, it believes everything that the mind feeds it. If you've ever felt those emotions called anxiety, fear, anger, frustration, sadness, I'm sure we've all had different doses of these different emotions. It's usually where we think about something, either past or future, and then the body completely believes that thought to be true. And as a result, the body begins releasing certain hormones, stress hormones, chemicals. There are many different reactions that occur within the body. Faster heartbeats, gastric juices within the stomach, the tightening of muscles, clenched jaws. I think it goes on and on and on, simply because the body believes everything the mind is feeding it. And we begin by simply understanding this, or rather observing, and then investigating it for ourselves. So in this practice, you don't have to listen or blindly absorb what's being said. This is a contemplative practice where we can begin with the experiment of contemplating on these words from this present moment, and then on to those remaining moments even after this practice as life presents itself to us. And so right now, where your body is, where you can experience these different sensations of the fabric, of the seats underneath us, of the cushions underneath us. And then we can also experience the temperature of the rooms that we are in. For this, we move into those exposed areas of skin that surround our bodies. And this can be quite interesting when you simply notice the contrast between that temperature that is experienced through the exposed skin, which is often a little bit cooler in contrast with those parts that are covered in clothing. And so this moment, you use these doorways into this present moment. This particular doorway called our sense of touch that envelops the whole body. both external and internal. And then you move on to your sense of hearing. And you begin by simply calling whatever you hear right now, you call it a symphony of sounds. And this is a new composition that you've never heard before. And the critics are saying it's incredible, it's perfect in every way. And so you enter into this experience of listening with curiosity, with interest, in a state of allowing all of the sounds to exist as different, almost as though they were different instruments in a symphony. One of the instruments, the screaming child outside your window crying for milk in a pram. And the other one, the roadworks and the honking and the sirens and the helicopters and the footsteps, all a part of this symphony. Perfect in every way. But you may not be that accustomed to this particular piece of music. You like some of the sounds, you dislike some of the sounds. Notice these judgments. Wanting some of the instruments to play in a higher or a lower note, wanting some of these instruments to completely disappear from the symphony, wanting some parts of the symphony to be a little bit louder. Notice these wants, these dislikes. And notice and know this to be a part of the mind's momentum. And because these likes and dislikes are a part of the mind's momentum, how through your history you decided how you'd like meditations to be a certain way, for there to be a certain degree of silence or perhaps meditative music or something like that. And so that's a part of the momentum. And because it's a momentum, it's moving. And because it's moving, you allow it to move into your experience and then out of your experience. As you ground yourself here into this present moment where you become the observer of these movements, the witness to these movements, the witness to this momentum. Most of us are here in this practice so that we would like our minds to quieten down a little bit. We've experienced those moments. Some teachers call it alignment. Alignment between mind and body, which is here in this present moment. And sometimes it's even alignment between mind, speech, and the present moment. Sometimes those moments of alignment, they came during that perfect sunset, during that perfect meal, during that perfect concert. When you were playing a particular sport, when you were with someone you really cared about and you were smiling and laughing. In this practice, we appreciate every single one of those moments. But the practice involves very gradually discovering that very alignment is possible here. And some of you may already have started to experience these glimpses of alignment between mind and body. As your body, it aligns itself with your skin so that it may tell you about the fabric that covers your body. It may tell you about temperatures. It may tell you about softness or roughness. And one thing we will begin to discover through practice is that as the mind aligns itself into the present moment, it leaves all of those stories behind. The finances, the relationships, the likes and the dislikes, and it simply lands here, curious about the symphony that surrounds it. And as we remind ourselves that this is a practice that will gradually slow the thought process down, we release the need to force the mind to be still, to fight with thoughts. And so it begins with the simple premise that whatever's going on in the mind is absolutely fine. I give it permission to think, recognizing this to be the momentum, almost like a stream flowing down a mountain, moving down a slope, carrying with it its own momentum. And you know how much work it's going to be building a dam, redirecting the stream. And so instead of attempting to do all of these things, instead of attempting to silence the mind, we simply allow it to flow. Observing it, witnessing it, almost as though right at the beginning you were smack inside of the stream. And then just like in one of those Google Map apps, you pan out so that you find yourself above the stream, and then you see the banks on either side of the stream. And then you move even further back and you begin to notice the source, the peak, quite separate from the witness, quite separate from the observer, until pretty soon you become a satellite drifting high up in space. with the ability to focus, with the ability to direct your attention. And right now, you have started to discover the ability to refocus and direct your attention to those little aspects of this present moment, such as the skin and the sounds. And if your eyes were open, or even now that they're shut, all that is entering into your experience in this moment. And you're probably familiar with how many teachers, they guide us towards the use of our sense of hearing as a very precious and valuable tool in a practice such as this, in a practice where we learn how to slow our thought process down. And if you'd like to explore this particular aspect of the practice, then is there a particular sound around you that you didn't notice? Right at the beginning, I spoke about the symphony of sounds that surround you. Notice how the first sounds that you normally experience, or you hear, or you notice, are usually the sounds that matter to you, that you either like or dislike. For me, I can hear the playground in front of the school nearby, and there are whistles going off, there are kids running about. So that's a part of my symphony. And the bell, it's something that I really do enjoy. So I notice the sound of the bell, and then that's the sound of my voice. And all of these sounds, they make up this symphony, but you can take this practice a little bit further by noticing those sounds that you didn't quite notice. Have you identified any of those sounds? It's almost like, I think they refer to it as white noise. For me, it's the humming of my laptop, computer's fan. And sometimes it almost includes the sound of the children playing. That's almost in the background. I've almost accepted that it's there. Sometimes I don't notice it. And if you were to try to focus on this particular sound that you didn't notice earlier on, and if you can't actually notice one of these neutral sounds, that's what we call it, neutral sounds, then notice the gaps between all of those other sounds. You'll notice even with my voice, there are gaps, spaces appearing between the sounds. You will notice a silence and a spaciousness behind every sound. And you know this because the only reason you can hear the bell, the only reason you can hear my voice, the only reason you can hear any of the sounds around you is because there is relative silence from which these sounds emerge. And as we learn, as we practice focusing on these neutral sounds, these sounds that matter very little to us, that we neither like nor dislike, it will have the effect of no longer stimulating thought, no longer stimulating new thought. And so all you notice are the old thoughts. But even the old thoughts, you begin to notice the gaps between them increasing. And the same way that satellite focuses on particular points, we begin to shift our focus to these gaps. Sometimes they are very tiny little glimpses, fleeting, like a flash, but you caught it. And the more you focus on it, almost as though the satellite, it uses its telescopic capabilities to zoom in and focus on those gaps. So that the thoughts that make up the forms, they become secondary. So that the sounds that emerge from the silence, they too become less important. And the spaciousness and the stillness and the silence and the kindness and the wisdom of this present moment. Don't worry about your mind drifting away, your focus shifting back into form, back into those things you need to do, back into those things that you've done or haven't done. Just let the bell call you back into this present moment. As Eckhart Tolle often says, the bell, he uses the bell as a call to attention, a call into awareness, a call into the present moment. Even notice the way in which your mind reacts to the bell. Notice how the volume of the bell changes from moment to moment and from ring to ring. Notice how the mind judges some as too loud, some as too soft, some as perfect, and some as less than perfect. These so-called imperfections, these so-called perfections, not only from this bell, but from our immediate environments. They're very precious tools in directing us to this momentum within our mind, that judges. What do I mean by judges? It's judges is, I think, when we, especially those of us from the legal system, a judgment can seem very harsh, but it's simply, in its most simplified definition, likes and dislikes. That's all it is. Let's find ways in which to ground ourselves a little bit deeper into the present moment. And the breath can be a very useful tool in this. So very gradually, almost as though you were watching a theatrical production where all the spotlights are on the stage. The lights in the auditorium are all switched on so you can see all of the audience members. You can see what everyone's wearing. You can see the chatter. And right now, the spotlight is shining throughout our body. We can feel the fabric of clothing. We can feel our seats underneath us. We can hear all of the sounds around us. We can even see the shadow of light through our eyelids if they are closed. We can smell certain things. There may even be the aftertaste of something that you had eaten earlier on. And so you are very present here in this moment, but the awareness is quite overwhelming to us to a degree. And then very gradually the lights, they begin to fade. Let your mind imagine this, the lights beginning to fade. And then the star of the show appearing onto the stage. And this star in this moment will be the rims of our nostrils. Our attention gradually shifting towards these rims, where we begin noticing the flow of air. Nowhere else but that entry point, just at the entry point. But noticing the flow of the air, being as easy as you can about it. So not taking even this practice too seriously, just letting go and just being aware, being present. And so you step away from that act of doing the observation and actually become the observer. And what are we seeking? Just sensations. How do you know which direction the breath is flowing? How do you know which one is an in-breath and which one is an out-breath? Which is that part of you that is witnessing this? Where is this part? Where is this witness? And then you move on to the temperature of the air that flows in giving you glimpses into the temperature of the space, the room around you. And then as you exhale, as you breathe out, your sensations, they expand down your upper lip. The air exiting feeling slightly warmer. How do you know that this is warm air? Again, it's because of the mind aligning itself with the skin. It doesn't really matter how warm or how cool the breath is. What's more interesting is the stillness and the silence of this present moment. As the mind steps away from its momentum, its stories, but we still use the mind. It's the filter that allows us to know that this is warmth, that this is cool, that this is crisp and dry, and this is humidity. The mind feeds us the information that this is an in-breath because I learned it a long time ago. This is what it feels like to inhale. And this exhalation, it means the air is moving in that direction. Just words. And we recognize how these combination of sounds that make up words point towards something so much deeper and so much more profound. The limitations of language. And so we move into experience. Which nasal passage are you utilizing at this particular moment? Are you breathing more through your right or your left nasal passage? How can you tell? As you awaken the sensitivity within the sensitive skin of the nasal passage. And now as you alter the pace of your breathing so that you breathe in a little bit deeper, comfortably, but breathing in a little bit deeper, changing the pace of your breath. Begin discovering that point at which your breath bends downwards. You might feel the moisture. You might be amazed at how sensitive the skin here actually is when this spotlight of attention reaches it. Have you discovered that area where it bends? But it doesn't matter any longer because we're going to move downwards towards the throat, where it becomes a little bit more vivid, where the sensations become a little bit more vivid. As the air makes its way down your windpipe, through your throat, notice how our breath becomes, it's like a cave that appears to transport us into the inner chamber. deep within our selves, following the breath as it moves down the chest. And with the chest, the lungs within and through the lungs, the way in which the lungs brush against the rib cage, and then the way in which the rib cage, it moves the muscle and the flesh as we move towards the surface level of the chest. And that skin against fabric, against clothing. But then returning back back deep within the body, following the breath even lower down into the stomach, still breathing in at a slightly altered rhythm, breathing in deeper, and this time your exhalation, you're releasing as slow, as gentle, as comfortably as would allow you to magnify every movement, every sensation that you experience within your stomach, around your stomach. This inner chamber, but soon you discover that this inner chamber that you have reached, where it's so much quieter than the outside, it leads even deeper, and you're only beginning to discover the depth, the kindness, the gentleness, the wisdom, and the infinite patience of no longer needing to be somewhere else, to do something else, to simply just witness this inner chamber accessible through 5 doors, 5 doorways that surround this so-called house that we have created. The 5 senses. Perhaps releasing an intention that having experienced this inner chamber, so filled with light, so filled with kindness, so filled with wisdom, this moment, just this moment, we shall translate our present moment through this filter of kindness, this filter of understanding, this filter of wisdom, releasing the need to filter through the mind, finding every experience to be the only experience, finding every sound, every sensation, every smell, every taste, to simply be without the need to compare, to categorize, to judge. And now I'm going to ring the bell, and it's just going to be an opportunity to stretch your body, to have a sip of whatever it is you have in front of you, or to simply just change your posture. Don't worry about switching off your camera and just lying down and being comfortable. Here comes the bell. It might involve a very comfortable massage of a particular part that might be calling out to you. It might be the loosening of a knee joint or something like that. Since we're at the theater in our vision, since we have this use of the spotlights, let's continue with this visualization. So as you probably know, much of this practice involves experiences that no words will ever be able to describe. And so we use metaphors. Many teachers use parables. And so in this practice, just to understand our relationship with our mind a little bit better, let's continue to imagine ourselves seated in this auditorium, this concert hall, this magnificent building where this play unfolds in front of us, this great theatrical piece. And we will call this theatrical piece the story within our minds. And the acting is superb, the music score engaging, the lighting perfect. And if you're not much of a theater goer, just call it one of your favorite movies, completely engaged in the story. And you'll notice that one of the characters has a remarkable resemblance to you. He or she looks like you, sounds like you, has your height, your body shape. And the characters all around this character are as familiar to you. But because the acting is so good, you've completely hypnotized yourself into this play, into this movie, which is what movies and theater often do, which is why we love incredible actors and incredible pieces of movie soundtracks. they draw us into particular emotions and situations. So much so that we experience every emotion, both good, painful, bad, no matter how you would like to label it. We experience what the characters go through. But now, remember how at the beginning of the play, the lights went off, the spotlights went up on the stage, focusing on the breath, focusing on the hero of the show or the heroine. Now, we're going to do the opposite, where with the ringing of the bell, the lights are going to come back on. So right now, you're engaged in it. There is sadness, there is excitement, there is drama, there are the relationships, the health stories, the finances, and all of that. The good, the bad, the villains, the heroes. And with the ringing of the bell, the lights, they begin to come on. It's almost as though they have those dimmers, those fancy dimmers that allow, that very gradually come on, and then you begin to notice that there are heads in front of you. There are many rows, the audience members, 6, 7, 8, 9 rows in front of you. There is space, there is distance between yourself and the screen or the stage. There are audience members to your right, to your left, to you, behind you. You begin to wake your senses up, your doorways into the present moment. You feel your seats, you feel your cushions, you feel your clothing, you feel the air conditioning or the heating around you, the room temperature. You take a deep breath. You become the witness. You become the observer of the story, of the drama. And then, no matter what, whether it was an upsetting story or an exciting story or any one of those other categories, a smile appears on your lips simply because you are now aware that you are a member of the audience, a witness, someone present in this hall and no longer a part of the play, of the movie, of the production. And you listen to the sounds. You notice the projectors, you notice the crew working on the lights, and you notice how magnificent and perfect the whole spectacle unfolds. But there is a stillness, there is a silence in this knowing, and it allows you to smile no matter what the story is. But before we end, there is a twist. You know the ending. In fact, you know the director of this play, this movie. And you know this particular director always comes up with a happy ending. One where everything works out. It always works out. And you know this because each and every one of us here in this particular virtual room, we've been through turbulent periods in our life. But look where we are right now. Here, in this moment, participating in a practice such as this. with like-minded beings, with access to this technology, with access to this privacy, this space, and so much more. These bodies that allow us to participate in this practice, which simply all point out to more being right in our lives than wrong. And so it all works out. And all we shall do is release the doing and simply be here in this present moment, watching the play, sometimes enjoying the drama, enjoying the tears, the angers, the frustrations, the smiles, the sunsets, the laughter, the comedy. And here comes the final bell, where we move through the remaining parts of this day and the week and the coming weeks and months and years. In this presence, in this knowing, in this understanding, with this kindness, no longer in a hurry, having stepped outside of that concept called time. As always, a really sincere thanks to all of you for joining in this practice. And I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful weekend. And those of you from Jamyang, we are having physical practice there on Sunday. So it's on the timetable. So please feel free to join in. Have a lovely afternoon to everyone. Take care. Bye-bye. It's a pleasure. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye, guys.